My mother looked nervous and said, "Sign this now so we can move on," while relatives watched me give up my share. I signed slowly and said nothing. I felt every eye in that room land on me like heat from a stove. My pen moved across the paper, and I watched my hand as if it belonged to someone else. Someone trained, someone tired. Months later, when she needed my cooperation for something urgent and everyone was waiting, she stopped talking mid-sentence, because I did something I had never done before. I kept my hands in my lap, and I said no. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back. Let me show you what they thought they buried. And let me explain why, when they needed me most, the ground gave way beneath them instead. The house was a two-story home on Althea Road, just outside a town in Georgia you have probably never heard of. It had been in my family for 2 generations. My grandmother bought it when she was 31 years old, with money she saved from working at a textile factory for 9 years. She raised her children there. She raised me there too, mostly, because my mother had trouble staying in one place. That house had a porch that wrapped around the side. It had a magnolia tree in the front yard that bloomed every spring with flowers so white they looked like they were made of paper. The kitchen had green tile from 1987, and the second step on the staircase creaked no matter how carefully you walked. I know this because I spent years of my childhood avoiding that step when I came home late. I know this because I spent years of my adulthood pressing my full weight on it just to hear it groan back at me like an old friend. My grandmother used to sit in the front room and watch cars pass. She would wave at everyone. Half the time she did not even know who they were. She told me once that kindness does not need a reason, that it is just something you offer, because the world already takes so much. She was the only person in my family who ever made me feel like I was not a problem to be solved. Let me tell you what I mean by that. If you are watching this from somewhere far away, maybe a city I have never been to, maybe another country entirely, let me know in the comments where you are from, because I want to know if this kind of thing is familiar to you. Where I grew up, silence was considered politeness, and I was very, very polite. I was the second of 3 children. My older brother left home at 18 and never really came back except to borrow money. My younger sister was considered the creative one, the emotional one, the one who needed protection and softness and patience. That left me as the reliable one, the one who did not cause trouble, the one who would always figure it out. That sounds like a compliment. It was not. It was a job description no one asked me to accept. When I was 17, my grandmother started showing signs of memory problems. Small things at first. She would repeat stories. She would forget what day it was. One time she called me by my mother's name and then apologized for 10 minutes straight. I told her it was fine. I meant it. She was the only person whose confusion never felt like rejection. By the time I was 19, she needed help with almost everything: cooking, cleaning, getting dressed. My mother visited once a week if we were lucky. My brother sent cards on holidays but never came. My sister was living in North Carolina chasing a boyfriend who did not want to be caught. So I stayed. I gave up my first year of community college to stay. I told myself I would go back. Then I gave up my second year too. By the third year, I stopped pretending it was temporary. I was her caretaker. That was my identity now. I fed her. I bathed her when she could no longer do it herself. I sat beside her bed at night when the confusion turned to fear. She would grab my hand sometimes and whisper my name like it was the only word she still trusted. I do not say this for pity. I say it because it matters. It matters because while I was doing all of this, my mother was making other plans, plans that did not include me. There were papers, legal ones. My grandmother had written a will years before her mind started slipping. In that will, she left the house to me. She told me about it once, clearly, on a day when her memory was still sharp enough to hold weight. She said, "This house is yours when I am gone. I do not care what anyone says. You earned it. You stayed." I did not think about it much at the time. I did not want to think about a world without her. But I remembered. I remembered everything. What I did not know was that my mother had access to my grandmother's documents. What I did not know was that during the last year of my grandmother's life, when her mind was more fog than sky, my mother brought in a lawyer, a different one, someone I never met, and she had my grandmother sign new papers, papers that changed everything. I found this out later, piece by piece, like pulling shards of glass out of a wound you did not know you had. My grandmother passed in March. It was a Tuesday. She went in her sleep. I was downstairs making breakfast. I heard nothing. When I walked into her room with a tray of toast and eggs, she was already gone. Her face looked calm. Her hand was resting on the quilt she had made when she was younger. I sat beside her for almost an hour before I called anyone. I did not cry. I could not. Everything inside me had turned to stone, not because I did not love her, but because grief that deep does not come out right away. It takes its time. It waits until you are alone and the house is dark and there is no one left to hear you. The funeral was small. My mother cried loudly and held my hand for the cameras. Family came from out of town, cousins I had not seen in years. Everyone kept saying how strong I was, how brave, how good I had been. I did not feel strong. I felt invisible. 2 weeks after the funeral, my mother asked me to come to her apartment. She said it was time to discuss the estate. I thought that meant paperwork. I thought that meant logistics. I did not expect to walk into a room full of relatives, all sitting in a circle like some kind of intervention. The table in the center had a document on it, a single document, and my mother was standing over it with a pen in her hand. She looked nervous. That is the part I remember most. She looked nervous the way someone does when they know what they are about to do is wrong, but they are doing it anyway. She said, "Sign this now so we can move on." I looked at the paper. It was a quitclaim deed. It transferred any interest I might have in the property on Althea Road to her name, solely, permanently. I asked, why? She told me it was just for simplicity, so we did not have to go through probate. So we did not have to fight in court. She said it would all be split evenly later. She said, "You will always have a place. This is just a formality." My aunt nodded. My uncle looked at his phone. My cousin sipped her drink like we were discussing the weather. I signed it. I signed it because I was tired. I signed it because I did not know what else to do. I signed it because somewhere inside me, I still believed that family meant something, that love meant something, that my mother would not lie to me about the only thing my grandmother ever gave me. I was wrong. Within a month, my mother had moved into the house. Within 2 months, she was redecorating. New furniture, new curtains. She ripped out the green tile in the kitchen and replaced it with something gray and modern. By the 3rd month, she was talking about selling. I found out from a cousin, not even directly. I overheard it at a family cookout. My mother had been shopping for real estate agents. She wanted to list the house before summer ended. She told people it was too much upkeep, too many memories, that she needed the money to start fresh. She never told me. She never told me because she did not think I mattered. There was a moment, after I found out, when I almost let it go. I was staying with a friend at the time, sleeping on a pull-out couch in a basement that smelled like old laundry. I had applied for a job in another state. I had started packing what little I had. I told myself it was not worth the fight, that I did not have the money for lawyers, that my mother would spin the story and make me look bitter, ungrateful, obsessed. I told myself that peace was more important than property. I almost believed it. But then I went back to the house, one last time, just to collect some things I had left behind, a box of photographs, a necklace my grandmother had given me, a few books I had forgotten on the shelf in my old room. My mother was not there. She had gone to visit my sister in North Carolina. The house was empty. It smelled different now, like someone else's air freshener, like a stranger's version of home. I walked through every room slowly. I touched the walls. I stood in my grandmother's bedroom and felt the ghost of 1,000 nights sitting beside her. And then I found the drawer. It was in the back of her closet, a small drawer built into the wall that I had forgotten even existed. My mother had not touched it because she probably did not know it was there. I only knew because my grandmother had shown me once years ago when I was still a child. She called it her secret place. Inside, there was a folded piece of paper and a note. The note was in her handwriting, shaky but clear, dated 3 years before she died. It said, "This house is hers. If I cannot say it later, I am saying it now. Do not let them take it." The folded paper was a copy of the original will, the real one, the one that named me. I stood there for a long time. My hands were shaking. My vision blurred with tears I had been holding since the day she passed. No one knew I had found this. No one was watching. No cameras, no witnesses. I could have taken it and disappeared. I could have burned it and walked away and spent the rest of my life convincing myself that peace was more important than truth. But I did not. I took photographs. I made copies. I folded the original carefully and placed it in my bag, and I left that house knowing that I would never be invisible again. Let me be honest about something. My mother is not a monster. That would be easier. Monsters are simple. You see them, and you run. My mother is a person who learned long ago that survival means taking. She grew up poor. She raised 3 children mostly alone. She worked jobs that broke her body and paid her nothing. I watched her cry at the kitchen table more times than I can count. There was one night, years ago, when she held my hand and said, "You do not know what it is like to raise kids alone and have everything fall apart." I believed her. I felt sorry for her. I wanted to protect her. But here is what I learned. That moment, that tearful confession, came right after she had asked me to skip my college orientation to stay home and help with bills. That hug came with a price tag. That softness was not love, it was leverage. Every vulnerable moment she ever showed me was followed by a request. Every apology came attached to an ask, and I kept saying yes because I thought that was what love looked like. It is not. Love does not keep a ledger. Love does not calculate what you owe. And love does not steal your grandmother's house and tell you it is for your own good. If you have ever had to separate someone's pain from their pattern, if you have ever had to forgive what they have been through while still holding them accountable for what they chose, tell me about it in the comments. I want to know how you found your way out, because it took me longer than it should have. I did not confront my mother right away. That is not how this works. Not when you are dealing with someone who has spent a lifetime spinning stories. Instead, I found a lawyer, a real one, someone who specialized in estate disputes. I showed her the documents, the original will, the newer one that had been signed during my grandmother's decline, the quitclaim deed I had signed under pressure, without legal counsel, without full disclosure. She looked at everything. She asked me questions I did not want to answer, and then she said something I will never forget. "This is contestable. This is more than contestable. This might even be fraud." I did not feel joy when she said that. I felt tired because I knew what was coming. I knew the cost. But I also knew that I could not live the rest of my life as someone who let herself be erased. The legal process took time, months of paperwork, depositions, witnesses. I found an older cousin who remembered my grandmother talking about the will. I found a neighbor who had seen my mother bring the new lawyer to the house during my grandmother's final year. I found records showing that my grandmother had been diagnosed with moderate dementia before those new documents were signed. Piece by piece, the story fell apart. Not the story I was telling, the story my mother had built. There were phone calls, angry ones. My mother left voicemails accusing me of tearing the family apart. My brother sent a text saying I should be ashamed. My sister posted something vague on social media about people who cannot let go of the past. I did not respond. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I had already said everything that mattered in the filing, in the filing, in the evidence, in the quiet refusal to disappear. The turning point came at a family cookout. I had not planned to go. I had been avoiding family events for months, but something in me needed to be seen, not heard, just seen. I arrived late. The yard was full of people eating and laughing and pretending everything was normal. My mother was standing near the grill, holding court the way she always did. When she saw me, her face changed, just for a second, a flicker of something between fear and fury. She walked over to me and started talking. Something about how we needed to work this out as a family. Something about lawyers making everything worse. She had this tone she always used, half wounded and half righteous, designed to make me feel guilty for having boundaries. She was mid-sentence when I interrupted her. I said, "It is in court now. Please do not talk to me about letting go. I have already done that more times than I can count." And then I walked away. I did not yell. I did not explain. I just left. And for the first time in my life, I did not look back to see if she was okay. That was the moment I knew I had changed. Not because I won something, but because I stopped needing her approval to feel real. The case took almost a year to resolve. There were hearings. There were delays. There were moments when I thought about giving up just to make the stress stop. But I did not. And in the end, the court ruled in my favor. The original will was upheld. The newer documents were deemed invalid due to lack of capacity and undue influence. The quitclaim deed I had signed was voided because it had been obtained under false pretenses, without legal representation, and with deliberate misrepresentation of the facts. The house on Althea Road was transferred back into my name. Not my mother's name, not split among siblings, mine, because that is what my grandmother wanted, because that is what was always supposed to happen. I did not celebrate. Not in the way people expect. There was no party, no speech, no moment of triumph where I stood in front of everyone and declared victory. I just got the keys. I went back to the house on a Thursday afternoon. It was quiet. The air inside still smelled wrong, like my mother's perfume and cleaning products that my grandmother never used. But underneath it, I could still find traces of what used to be. The creak of the second step, the way light came through the window in the front room, the ghost of Magnolia through the screen door. I walked through every room again, this time, not as a visitor, not as someone collecting what was left, but as someone who belonged. I started small. I repainted the kitchen, took out the gray tile my mother had installed and found something warmer, something closer to what had been there before. I fixed the porch railing. I planted flowers in the front yard. I did not rush. A few weeks after I moved in, my mother showed up. She stood on the sidewalk like she was waiting for permission, or maybe waiting for a fight. I opened the front door. I did not step outside. I just stood there and looked at her. She started to speak. Something about how this was not fair. Something about how she had given everything for this family. Something about how I would regret this one day. I let her finish. And then I said, "You weaponized history. I kept evidence. That is the difference between us." I closed the door. She stood there for a while. I do not know how long. Eventually I heard her car start and pull away. She has not come back. My brother called once to tell me I had destroyed the family. I told him the family was a construction that required my silence to function. He hung up. We have not spoken since. My sister sent a long message about forgiveness and moving forward. I read it. I did not respond. Forgiveness is not something you owe people who have not asked for it. And moving forward does not mean pretending the past did not happen. I am not angry anymore. I was, for a while, late at night when the house was dark and I could hear the creak of old wood settling. I would feel it rising in my chest. All the years I gave, all the moments I was overlooked, all the times I was told that my needs were less important than everyone else's comfort. But anger is heavy, and I had already carried enough. So I let it go. Not for them. For me. There is a room in this house, on the second floor, that used to be a storage space. My grandmother always talked about turning it into a reading nook. She had this vision of a little corner with a chair by the window and shelves full of books and soft light in the afternoon. She never got to do it. I did. I cleared out the boxes. I painted the walls a soft cream color. I found a chair at an estate sale that looked almost exactly like the one she used to describe. I built the shelves myself, not perfectly, but good enough. I filled them with books, hers first, then mine. Now, when the afternoon light comes through the window, I sit there and I read. Sometimes I talk to her, even though I know she cannot hear me. I tell her about the house. I tell her about the magnolia tree, which bloomed again this spring, white flowers like paper, just like she said. I tell her I stayed. I tell her I kept my promise, even when no one else kept theirs. They always said I had nothing to say, that I was quiet because I had nothing worth hearing, that I stayed in the background because I did not have what it took to stand in front. They were wrong. If you are still watching, if you stayed with me through all of this, thank you. It means more than I can say. Like the video. Subscribe if you have not already, and tell me in the comments what part of this you will carry with you. It does not have to be anything big, just one line, one moment,